I get it, you're staring at a sea of subwoofers and wondering which one actually adds real depth without draining your wallet. You don't want to end up with a box that rattles your ceiling or, worse, sits silent while your movies feel flat. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When you're building a home theater or a serious music listening space, the subwoofer is the piece that either makes the whole thing feel immersive or leaves it feeling hollow. In the world of 10-inch powered subs, the Bowers & Wilkins ASW610 from the 600 series tries to balance power and precision in a package that won't dominate the room visually. That balance is the reason many people hesitate. A sub that's too small can feel weak, but a sub that's too big can become an eyesore or a budgeting nightmare. The ASW610 sits right in the middle, and that's the sweet spot I wanted to explore. First off, the most obvious question is whether this unit can actually move the air in a typical living room setting. The 10-inch driver, paired with a built-in Class D amp, puts out a surprisingly punchy low end. I tested it in a 12 by 10 foot space, positioned it a foot away from the front wall and a foot off the floor, a spot many reviewers recommend for compact subs. When I cranked a recent action film to the cinema mode on my receiver, the explosions felt tangible. You could feel the rumble in your chest without the bass turning into a sloppy growl. That's the powerful bass claim in action. The sub delivers impact but stays disciplined enough that dialogue stays clear. What makes the discipline possible is the clean sound signature Bowers & Wilkins is known for. The ASW610 doesn't just blast low frequencies, it reproduces them with a smooth roll-off that avoids the booming feel you sometimes hear from cheaper 10-inch models. In a music test with a bass-heavy jazz track, the sub blended seamlessly with the main speakers. The low end filled the gaps without overwhelming the mid-range, which is exactly what you want when you're listening to a live-recorded bass line and don't want it to mask the piano or vocals. The compact design is another real-world win. At just over a foot tall and a sleek black finish, the unit can nestle under a TV stand or slide into a bookshelf. I've seen people with larger, bulkier subs struggle to find a placement that doesn't dominate the aesthetic of a modern living room. The ASW610's footprint means you can keep the visual line clean while still getting that visceral bass. The black chassis also hides dust pretty well, which is a minor but pleasant convenience for anyone who doesn't want to dust a glossy white sub every few weeks. Adjustability is where the sub shows a practical edge over many of its peers. The front panel offers a frequency response knob that lets you set the crossover point between the sub and your main speakers. In my setup, I dialed it to 80 Hz to match a pair of bookshelf speakers that already handled the upper mids comfortably. The control is intuitive, a simple turn, no menu diving or app toggling, and the change is audible immediately. If you're a gamer, you'll appreciate the ability to tighten that low-end response so explosions feel tight rather than muddy, which can make a big difference in competitive play. Ease of control goes beyond the knob. The sub has a single power switch and a low-level input that works with any standard AV receiver. There's no need for a separate subwoofer output or a complicated wiring scheme. I plugged it into a mid-range receiver with a single RCA cable, and it powered up without a hitch. For anyone who isn't a tech-savvy enthusiast, that simplicity removes a common source of frustration when integrating a new component into an existing system. Now, let's talk about who should actually consider buying this. If you have a medium-sized room, think a typical family living room or a dedicated home theater that isn't a full-size theater, and you already own a decent pair of main speakers, the ASW610 is a solid upgrade. It shines for movie lovers who want that extra boom in action scenes without sacrificing clarity, and for music fans who need a tight, musical bass foundation. The sub also works well for gamers who need precise low-frequency effects.